Welcome to 100 Yards of Football this morning. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. I surely appreciate here at 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. You know, over the past few weeks, the Lord has blessed me with some outstanding guests from the past. And I always say thank you. And last night I got on my knees because I'm bringing on a gentleman that I cannot say is royalty. And he's done it not only from an academic standpoint, an athletic standpoint, but he's also done it from a mentor. So further ado, he's out of Ruston, Louisiana. He played baseball at Southern University from 1959 to 1963. Then after that, you know the caveat and how God is in this plan. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and everyone that's been watching 100 Yards Football know how Vincent Turner feel about two things. I feel great about where I'm from, Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I always say it's Cowboy Nation. Well, this gentleman's son was a first-round draft pick in the 1991 NFL Draft. But let's get to his story. My man coming out of Ruston, Louisiana, by way of Southern University, Mr. James Maryland. How you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing wonderfully well. I'm blessed, Vince. Thank you so much for asking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we're going to move on here real quickly. Not quickly, but we're going to be on here, I would say, for a few minutes because we're going to talk about your great, great story. So if you like the video, to the audience out there today, please come in and share. We'll surely appreciate it here on 100 Yards Football. Mr. Maryland, you attended school in the Ruston, Louisiana area. We're going to go back to your grammar school. We're going to go to middle school. Then we're going to go to your high school exploits. But one thing I want to ask you, Ruston, Louisiana, when I was doing my research, there's something in the water in Ruston, man. When you look at the area not being that big, but you got Burt Jones, you got Dub Jones, you got Terry Bradshaw. I didn't even know J.R. Richards went to the same high school. Ralph Garr. What's in the water, man? And why is Ruston all these years has made this city so special in your career?
Well, I tell you what, Vince, it's hard to answer that question. However, over the years, Lincoln Parish, which is located here in this Ruston area, we are blessed to have had all of these great athletes to come forth. However, there were many, many that you have missed simply because that big, ugly thing they call segregation.
Yes,
We've
sir.
missed many of our great black athletes to be put on the main marquee simply because of segregation. However, that is one of the things that we have worked through and we have made advancements. So actually, we just continually to pray that things will get better and that we can do a better job with race relationships in this area. We've done well and we're making a lot of progress. However, we've lost out on a lot of our black athletes.
Okay, let's start with your grammar school. Who was some of your mentors that really got to where you was going, starting from grammar school, middle school, and high school? Some of your mentors that played a big role in your life.
Okay, let me just give you a little background. I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, raised up in Ruston. And of course, my mentorship came from God I served, then to my grandparents, Monroe and Palmetto, Maryland, who raised me. That was my father's parent. At this time, my dad had gone into World War II, and my mother was a struggling young lady working. So my paternal parent took me and reared me. That's where it all started. And then it went into Zion Traveler Baptist Church. Many of the mentors there, W.R. Lewis, J.L. Elam, Reverend J.B. Huey, Mrs. Simmons, Mrs. Starks, Mrs. Lewis, just so many people that helped to make up this rearing community. Okay, from there, I went into my grammar school. I started at Lincoln High School Elementary School. The high school and elementary was combined. However, at an early age, because I had to catch the bus and go to Lincoln High, which was about maybe 2 miles away, they then constructed and started a school right in my back door, right in my front door, really. It was called Greenwood Elementary. So I transferred from Lincoln High School Elementary to Greenwood Elementary. And boy, did we have some great grammar school teachers. They really taught you the 3 R's, okay? And mainly, as one of my mentors there at Greenwood was Mrs. Gustavia Moore Bailey, and then on to Mary Edna McHenry and R.D. Jensen. And then there was Mrs. Ross, and that was at that time, Mrs. Foster, and then the principal, Mr. Ellis. Those people really, really gave me a basic fundamental background academically and a disciplinary type core. They were great people. And from that elementary school, I got to know quite a few people. And one of my baseball mentors was Coach Wilbert Ellis. He's referred to now as Coach because he's the retired baseball coach at Grambling State University. Back then, it was Grambling College. Coach Ellis started as a field yard person under the great president of Grambling at that time, and unusually spoken of, you didn't have a president that was a baseball coach also, Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones. Coach Ellis came up under the tutelage of Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones. And when Dr. Jones retired, Coach Ellis took over as his baseball coach. He was his assistant, rather, and he became the head coach. That is where my mentorship came from, basically in baseball. As a young man in grammar school, we would all gather at Coach Ellis's house. Mr. and Mrs. Ellis just welcomed us there, and the kids played in the backyard. We played, and then, of course, you had mentors all over the community. Because, baby, if you did something wrong, you didn't only get a butt whipping right there on the spot. You got it all down the line. When you got home, you definitely got another butt whipping. So what happened is that we had a built-in community rearership, or rearing kids, if you want to coin these new terms I'm going to hit you with. So under the tutelage of Coach Ellis, Coach Ellis right now is 86 years old, and I'm 81. So you can see the difference in age. It's not that much. But this man had leadership qualities, and he loved the game of baseball, and he loved people. So we started a little league team after I finished playing basketball. We played basketball in elementary school. Of course, we didn't have the gyms. We had to play out on the dirt courts. And we had to go and make our own basketball goals. We go in the woods to get us a pine log, and we come back and we get a few people in the community that were great carpenters, and they would help us get these things together. And we played basketball on that dirt court. And of course, when we went to high school, from Greenwood to Lincoln High had a gym, of course.
Yes, sir.
And let's go back to my grammar school days of playing baseball. We had a park on my side of town, which was the east side of town. They call it East End. And we had a baseball field named Frazier Field. And of course, the director of the Park and Recreation field was Mr. Roy Frazier. Well, Mr. Frazier would let all the little black boys come down and we would clean the park up for him. If they had a game, we'd do the clean up the peanuts, the debris, the broken glass, and we could also do things out like we would clean the field, the actual baseball field. We would drag the field mostly because he had a young man who was, I would say, about 2.5 years older than me and had leadership qualities. His name was Willis C. Odom. He came from a baseball family. Willis C. was the oldest boy, and the other kid was R.C. Odom, and then you had Floyd Scutch Odom. And of course, these guys were almost living there at the park because they lived right near the park. And because we weren't that far apart anyway. But anyway, Willis C. was in charge. Mr. Frazier would go out and put his white shorts on and lay out in the sun while we did the work. But what he did, he allowed us to play baseball inside that park. And the thing is that we had integration there because Louisiana Tech had some of their baseball players on work study. And they were doing work there at the park. And of course, you had some of the white kids that would come in and join up with the Tech kids, and they would form a little team, and the black kids would play against them. The only black player that the white boys had on their team was my little cousin, who was the great Ralph Schooning Carr of the Atlanta Braves, of course, on to the Chicago White Sox and then to the California Angels. Ralph Garr was just a tot. Now, Ralph was born in, of course, 1945, and I was born in 1941. So you can see the age difference. Ralph could barely pull a bat, but he could hit that ball and could run like a rabbit. So the white boys would always let Ralph play with them. And we were always cautious that when we pitched the baseball, we would try not to hit our little cousin, okay? But he would hit that ball. And if he would strike out, he'd cry like a baby. He loved that game. We would play in that park all day. And of course, it happened Monday through Friday. And whenever the whites played baseball, we were all there to see the whites semi-pro team. They had two semi-pro teams the whites did. One was called the Ruston Volunteers, and the other was called the Ruston Rebels. But what happened is that the Volunteers somehow became defunct, and of course the Rebels changed their name to Ruston Ramblers. They only then had one white team. We knew all of the ball players. They respected us. We shag balls for them and do things that they gave us great respect because as youngsters, we had high skills in baseball. So this is where we got started with our baseball career. When I left Greenwood Elementary, I graduated as an 8th grader, and I went to Lincoln High School the fall of 1955. Okay, so while there, I played baseball, basketball, and football. I started out as Coach Jimmy Duncan, who was our coach. He called it our Greenhorns. And I don't know where Coach got this name from. Coach was, of course, he had gone to school in Colorado, and I think he was somewhere from Colorado. He brought a different culture to the school. And Coach Duncan called the youngsters that came out as freshmen Greenhorns. And at that time, I played football. Didn't know much about the game because we only played sandlot football. And we watched a little football on TV. We loved the Cleveland Browns because of Jim Brown, of course. And then I liked the Chicago Bears. And I also liked the Detroit Lions at the time. But anyway, I played football, and I also, after football season was over, I tried out for basketball. My mom told me, said, "Look, I know you're going to play baseball." Said, "But you got to drop one of those games." So I chose to stop playing basketball. And of course, went on to the baseball season. Now, Coach Ellis was a senior there. Wilbert Ellis was a senior at Lincoln High School. He had told Coach Duncan about us. Coach Duncan hadn't seen us play, but because he had confidence in Ellis's ability to identify good ball players, he put me on the team. And when I worked out, I became the only freshman that 1955 60 season. I'm sorry, 55-56 season
Yes, sir.
that made the first team. I was the
Amen.
first team left fielder. And of course, I never left first team my 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Tell
my
it.
years were real interesting. I wasn't the best player on that team. The best player, all-around player on that team was Alan Curry. And of course, R.C. Odom, my classmate, would have been the best player, best all-around player, but he left Ruston and moved to Houston. And of course, we had quite a few guys that could play baseball. For some reason or another, the boys from the East End area that were great baseball players at the time from grammar school and Little League, they wouldn't come out for baseball and wouldn't come out for football. I don't know what happened to our guys. But of course, that left me there to represent East End, and I think I represented it well.
Yes.
During the time that I played baseball, I don't think I batted under 350. And of course, Coach Duncan saw how accurate I could throw that ball and how hard I could throw it in from the outfield. He asked me to try for other positions. Our third baseman, L.E. Bonner, graduated. So Coach put me on third base, and I didn't like the infield. I just didn't like it. And he saw I didn't like it, although I could play it. And he wouldn't compel me to play third base. And he said, we need some pitchers. And Coach Duncan gave me the nickname of Bear. I said, man, what is this Bear stuff? Let me give you a little history as to how that Bear started. We were getting ready to play in well, at that time, he didn't call me Bear because I was still a freshman, sophomore. Well, yes, by the time I started pitching, I had the nickname of Bear. And let me tell you how he gave me that. We had an assembly for homecoming football. And all of the football players were seated in one area and the rest of the school seated. And Coach Duncan got up and did a few remarks. And then he said, well, I want you to hear from one of our greenhorn football players. So he got up, he called up Vincent Crawford. And Coach Vincent was real shy at the time. He had a very good speaking voice, very good diction and what have you. And Vince said his little bit, and then he said to the audience, say, I'm going to bring up one of our old timers, one of our varsity players, and one of our co-captains. And he said, Bear, come on up. And everybody looked around to see who the heck was Bear. And then he said, Jim Maryland. And boy, I'm going to tell you, the audience, including the teachers, just bust out laughing.
Yes,
So I
sir.
got up and I did my little thing, and I could never get rid of Bear. And I still sometimes called Bear by people throughout the United States. Now, going back to Lincoln High School baseball, Coach said, look, I need some pitching. Bear, you have that accurate arm and you are strong. You can throw that ball almost 85, nearly 99 miles an hour.
Mm.
And of course, you have a little bit of a curve and you're real smart. You study your batters. And I became a pitcher. And during the time that I pitched for Lincoln High, I only lost one game. Okay. So I left Lincoln High School and I went on to Southern University. But
Now,
prior to leaving Lincoln, my senior year, Coach, we call him Prez, Coach Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones, saw me working one morning, and he knew the white family that I was working for. And he came out in the backyard where I was raking the yards for him, doing the leaves and They had some prize bird dogs, the Glasgow family, Willis family, and I would attend those dogs for them and what have you, because I love hunting. And he said, "Sonny boy," he had a real thin voice. He said, "Sonny boy, ain't you the boy that Ellis been talking about?" So naturally I said, "Yes, Prayers. We call him Prayers." He said, "Well, I tell you what I'm going to do." These are his exact words. "I'm going to pay your tuition. I'm going to buy your books. You can't live in the dormitory, and you're going to have to get to school the best way you can." Well, that was no problem coming from Ruston to Grambling, because it was only 4.5 miles to 5 miles apart, and you had people coming there every morning, and of course, buses was running. That was no problem. I said, "Thank you, Prez. Thank you so much." But I'm going to be honest and tell the truth. I had no intention to attend Grambling for a lot of reasons. And I didn't like the way Prayers offered the scholarship to me. Okay? You can't live in the dormitory. You got to get to school the best way you can. I don't think that was a way that, not Jim Maryland, you don't offer him a scholarship like that.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So also during that senior year, there was a coach that came out of Tennessee State, Coach Little. Coach Little came down. And Coach Little, Coach Duncan, and Coach Little invited me in, and they sat me down. Coach Little said, "Young man," said, my coach was Jimmy Duncan, said, "Jimmy has stated that you would be the one ball player that we could use. But the problem is that I don't have an individual baseball scholarship to offer you. If you come to Tennessee, you're going to have to play football and baseball." Well, I had injured my ankle. A big 350-pound tackle from Haynesville, Louisiana, had clipped me, man. This guy ran into the back of my legs and just messed me up. And I should have stopped football at that point, because that was probably the first or second game of the season. But I played all year on that bad ankle and that bad knee. I never missed a game. I never missed a practice. I played through the pain. That was just the Maryland way. You play through the pain. You don't stop. You don't give up. You do your best, and then you do some more, and then you do more and more. You don't give up. So I was a decent student academically, and I decided, along with some of my classmates and my baseball, football teammates, that we were going to go to Southern University. I had no scholarship offer to Southern or anything. I was known in the state, but it was kind of rare for kids to get baseball scholarships only. I went to Southern, and when it came time for baseball season, of course, I entered Southern University the fall of 1959. And of course, the season started the spring of 1960. So we went out and started, and we had the likes of Lou Brock out there. And remember now, Southern University in 1958, the year before I came, was the first all-black school college to win the NAIA championship.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Southern University was the first all-black college or university to win the NAIA championship, all-black team. Southern University won. And of course, most of the players were sophomores at the time. So when I came to Southern, Coach Robert H. Lee and Coach Emory Hines really didn't have a need, I guess, for Jim Maryland. I was an outfielder. And when I came out for practice the first day, there were 10 Lou Brocks out in that outfield. Do you hear me? 10 Lou Brocks. These
Yes, sir.
guys were highly skilled. And the thing is, at that time, most of the players that played on that team were military veterans. They weren't the typical 18, 19-year-old kids. These guys were military veterans, 24, 25. One of my teammates was 10 years older than me, Harry Levy from Jennings, Louisiana. He was our captain. Of course, I went out and I practiced. Coach said, "Boys, one thing about me, I don't cut. you can practice every day all through the season. You will not get cut from the practice. So anyway, coach didn't look at me. I was pitching, of course. And one day I got real angry. It was just before their first game. And the first game was against Alcorn State down in Alcorn, Mississippi in that SWAC conference. And it was kind of wet outside and damp. Coach had us in the gym working out. So what happened is there was a young man, his last name was Williams. He was from Ville Platte, Louisiana, and he was a youngster. And we had a big, large mitt. And when you would throw in that mitt would pop. So I said, well, I'm going to get in this gym. And I get him in an isolated corner where the acoustics were great. And I told him to put his plate down, and we got there. And John Buck O'Neill, who was one of the old Negro League baseball players, at that time, he was scouting for the Chicago Cubs, Major League Baseball team. And John was there that day. And I want to tell you, I rocked. I started to throw those balls to Williams. Pop, pop. You could hear that mitt popping. So evidently, it got the attention of Buck O'Neill. So I didn't know all this was going on. And one of my old friends, Ed Woods, from Anderson, Indiana, came over and he said, look, Bear, said, man, keep throwing. He said that John Buck O'Neill said, you've thrown 23 strikes. And most of them were inside, outside, low, around the knee. And he had told Coach Lee, said, Coach, you better take a look at that boy. So Coach Lee and Coach Hans came over and saw me rocking. Oh, man, did I rock then. Oh, boy. I mean, I want to tell you, Vincent, I started to rock. And, well, when we finished in the gym, Coach said, youngster, come on out here on this baseball field. And he got some of his five-ballers to throw again. He said, can you hit? I was a little cocky at that point. I said, Coach, do you have a bat? So I tell you what, I usually batted with that 33, and I think it was an Al Kaline, a Harmon Killebrew 33. I could drive that ball out of the park with that bat. But the only bat Coach had was a Jackie Robinson 32 or 34. I think it was a Jackie Robinson, that little fat handle bat. I hated that bat. I loved Jackie Robinson, but I hated his bat. So Coach let me, he said, son, here, get up here. And he had these five balls. Well, you know how those older guys. He was a youngster, and I'm going to see if I can strike him out. Man, I was hitting line drive. Pow, pow. And I hit one back at one of his star pitchers like to knock his head off. Coach said, oh, that's enough. That's enough, son. It's okay. So I came in getting ready to go to my dormitory to do my shower and going on for dinner. Coach said, son, said, come over to my office. Come over to the athletic director's office tomorrow. The secretary is going to have something for you. I didn't know what it was. I said, okay, Coach, thank you. So I went over, and Mrs. Talton was the secretary to the then head football coach, and the athletic director was A.W. Mumford. Great man, great man. So she presented me this letter. She said, young man, say, I'm presenting this to you. Said, you have a full 4-year paid up scholarship for baseball. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. So you can imagine how I was. But then let me tell you what happened to me. Being a very spiritual person raised up in the church, I got a little bit on the cocky side.
Yes, sir.
I had some decent clothes, and I would be out on the campus flirting around with the girls and what have you, not half getting my studies done, but I was still, passing. And I would shout out of my room in the morning out the window. I would see these Catholic kids going, the girls had scarves over their nets over their heads or whatever, covered up, or they had little hats on. And they were on their way to the Catholic churches. It's largely Catholic in South Louisiana. So I would say, hey, young lady, where are you going? She said, I'm going to church. And I shouted out, what is that? What is that? Now, that wasn't like me at all. So
Yes, sir.
what happened is, during my freshman year, I relieved in one game. Okay, coach called on me. We were playing Texas Southern, and we didn't have a pitcher that could get these guys out. So I went on that hill and I threw them three for the money, three up and three down. So coach had something planned for me for the next year. So here comes my sophomore year, and up to Christmas holidays, I went home, and we had a dance, a little party. It was for the Grambling Southern University students. There was a lot of animosity, but we all had gone to Lincoln High School. We knew one another, and we had one of our partners, Vassie Bonner. Vassie Bonner was always getting in some kind of trouble. So the proprietor of the little venue was Red Bugs. He owned the venue where we had our party. And Vassie just kept acting up inside the party. And he came to me, Red Bugs, knowing that I was one of the leaders. He said, Bear, I'm going to have to close this party down because you guys can't control Vassie. So I went to Vassie and I talked to Vassie. I said, Vassie, listen, man, cool out, will you? I said, let's have fun, guy. It's Christmas time. So Vassie came back in. He started acting up again. Red put him out again. So about the third time, I had had enough of Vassie. And I walked up to Vassie with the idea of just knocking him out. And I punched Vassie with my right hand and broke my right hand. That's my pitching hand. So Vassie took off running, and I caught him about a half mile away. Boy, could he run. But I caught him. And Coach Ellis had a car, had a 51 Chevy. He couldn't even catch me in his car. Vassie and I were running, and we got down to what we call the Rock Island tracks. Vassie was headed east, but I caught him, and Coach looked and saw my hand had swollen. He said, oh, Jim, man, I think you broke your hand. So the next day I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, son, you need to go to Shreveport to the charity hospital and have them put a pin in this hand to keep that bone straight. Because if I put a plaster of Paris cast on it, I'm afraid that bone is going to move. And of course, I couldn't afford to go to Shreveport and stay in the hospital for maybe a week because my finals were coming up for the semester. So I told the doctor, do the plaster of Paris. He put it on my arm. And of course, I went back. And here I am, a right-hander. I had to learn how to write with my left hand and all of this bit. But the Maryland spirit, you fight through that. You don't quit. You don't quit. You do as much as you can, and then you do more. And then once you do more and more. So I learned how to write with my left hand. I didn't know I could do it. Coach was real sorry. He said, son, I had so many plans for you. But it did take me off scholarship. How about that? Usually, you get shot in the head, man, and that's it for you. But
Yes,
Coach
sir.
kept me on scholarship. Okay? I rehabbed. I worked hard, man, to rehab. But I had guys like Lou Brock around me. I had guys like Harry Levy, Ed Wood. These were guys, Charlie Gray, they were veterans. They had been in the military. And of course, Lou and I became friends. Now, we didn't run around together because Lou was a little slow. Okay, I was a little bit on the fast side compared to Lou. But when we would go off and play ball, I remember one time Lou became very dissident. He came trouble. Lou was a trouble kid, not trouble. He didn't cause trouble. He was trouble within his psyche. Okay. And I remember one day, Lou really wanted to talk to me, and he had gone into a batting slump. He said, look, Bear, he said, what am I doing wrong? I said, Lou, what you're doing, when you get up to bat, you're looking out the window. Now, that means that you're not watching the ball off the end of the bat when you hit it. He's hitting the ball from instinct, but he's not watching the ball all the way to the bat. I said, Lou, What I'm doing, I'm throwing you a pitch, and that pitch is moving away from you. He
Yes,
was a
sir.
left-hand hitter, and I had a little screwball that would veer out from that bat on the left-hand guy right at the end of that plate. I said, now what you need to do is to concentrate. But Lou's problem was much deeper than him not being able to hit the ball, because our coaches at the time, they weren't all Lou Brockhawks, although Lou was a good player. We had many Lou Brocks on that team. They really criticized Lou a lot, because when Lou would hit a single, he wouldn't run it out. Lou would make a turn and try to go on to second base. And usually he made it because of his speed. But then sometimes he was running so fast when he got to second. Remember now, we wasn't playing on the kind of baseball diamonds they have today. We were playing in some makeshift field
Yes, sir.
that they had a baseball park, a baseball field. And Lou was afraid to slide. And of course, we didn't have the pads, and you get those raspberries on your thighs. It would skin your thighs up. So anyway, Lou would overrun the bases, and that would drive our head coach, Robert Lee, just batty. He and Coach Hand. I remember one time, as I said, we were at Wiley College, and we were in the gym, and the gym dormitory that we stayed in was located right above the gym, and they were having a dance. All the ball players I thought had gone, and I'm prepping and trying to, be so dapper and have everything in place. So I got ready to leave the room. I thought everybody had gone, and then somebody said, "Hey, Honey Bear, Honey Bear." I said, "That's Lou." I said, "My grace, what does Lou want?" So he said, "Hey, man, come here, man." So I pulled my coat off, being neat, sit down on the bed with him. And he started to, talk about his problem. And he told me, he said, "You know what, I'm thinking about quitting school." I said, "Lou, man, you're a great student." Lou came, and Lou was going to major in engineering. But because of him, starting track when he first started Southern, and then from track to baseball, he stopped track and started playing baseball. He majored in math, and he was an A student in math. Okay, so I would sit there and listen to Lou, and really was saying, "Lou, will you please hurry up? Let me get down here and dance with some of these Texas girls." But anyway, I remember the next game that we played. We played against Prairie View, Texas, and Lou hit a single. He stretched it into a double, and the boy bobbled the ball in the outfield, and he went to third base, and coach had him holding up. He put his hand up. Hold up, hold up.
Sir.
Lou never stopped. Lou was on his way home, man, and they tagged him out. So Coach Lee, that was the third out. Coach Lee ran across the field to the bench. Lou had sat down on the bench by me, and he said, "Emery," talking to Coach Hans, who was our third base coach. "Emery, did you try to hold him up at third?" Emery Hans said, "I'll tell you what, Bob." Coach Lee was Robert Lee to call him Bob. Said, "Bob, I did everything but throw a lasso on that kid to try to catch him. I couldn't stop him for nothing. He came over and he balled Lou Brock out." Lou was a very manable guy, and he didn't say anything. But when Coach Lee and them left, here he come me. "Bear, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back." I said, "Oh, man, I just thought he was playing." But, of course, the next season, Lou didn't come back.
And you know
Lou
what?
went on to Chicago. And,
And
of
you know
course, I
what?
have a story to tell you about that. But that
But
was part of my tenure in baseball. But because I had broken my hand and I couldn't work these muscles in my arm, my arm was weak. Okay, had I not broken my hand, it would have been strong. But still, I was accurate. I was an accurate pitcher. At the time I was a senior, we didn't have much of a baseball team compared to the Lou Brock era. Okay, by the time 1963, my senior year rolled around, our players had got really, really weak. Okay, but I managed to win a few games because I studied the batters. Okay, most of these kids just get up there wild swinging, and I could get him out because of, I guess what you call my baseball intellect. Excuse
Yes,
me
sir.
for being a little cocky, but we had a good season, and of course, uh, at the end of the season, there was a scout from the Boston Red Sox. I don't know his first name. Uh, his last name was Scott. And Scott kept hounding me. He said, Bear, I want to sign you. I said, Scott, I have a job waiting on me in Chicago when I graduate. And Scott, all you're going to do is send me to the rookie league. I may stick and I may not. And I said, man, I'm not going to chance this. You're not offering any kind of signing bonus. So, Vince, I didn't sign a contract. I have a friend that lives in St. Louis, Missouri. His name is Mickey Talton. Mickey told me, man, I don't believe that. If they would have offered you to sign, you would have signed. I said, Mickey, I'm not like you. You from Sterling, Louisiana. You country boys. You'll sign anything to say I signed a contract. I said, we had a lot of boys on our team that signed, and they didn't go no further than the rookie league, or they went to AA, and that was it. They lost 3 years out of their professional life, and then they had to come back and start their professional life. That gave me 3 years on them. I was already into my profession, of course, so I didn't sign that contract.
But
Vince, do you have anything that you want to ask me at this point?
after, let me say this. Listening to you over the course of a few minutes is an honor.
Can you get a little closer to your microphone?
Yes. Listening to you, sir, has just been a tremendous honor. Just hearing you tell your stories, I'm just like a kid in a cookie jar, trying to steal my grandmother's cookies. But the thing that's so blessed about this is that you elected not to sign, but the end part of your life, you produced a son that went on, became a first-round draft pick with the Dallas Cowboys and played in one of the most powerful programs in college football, the University of Miami, the U. So right now, in the next 5 minutes, tell us what it's like to be a proud father. You being an athlete at that level at Southern University, as a pitcher in baseball, you come back and you have a baby boy that plays for America's team that won 3 Super Bowls and then went to the U. Talk about that over the next 5 minutes, over the next 3 minutes. What really took you through that level and you being a mentor and being so focused?
Well, I tell you what, my boys were big boys. Russell was not the baby boy. Eric was the oldest, then Russell was the middle boy, and Brian was the baby. All 3 of those guys were football players. They went to Whitney Young High School there in Chicago, which was a magnet high school, and it was a very
Michelle
good academic
Obama,
school.
Michelle Obama,
And of
Michelle
course, what happened
Obama.
is Russell and Eric played football there. Eric stopped playing his first year, and it really angered me. But I said, okay. And I said, well, Russell, I looked at Russell. Russell was there. Eric didn't play. I don't have to play. But, I went on and worked, and little that I knew, these guys were playing ball. They never told me. I worked for the Chrysler Corporation, and I would travel. I would be out of town. So when I get home on the weekend, I didn't know these guys were playing ball. So anyway, I found out they were playing ball. And of course, Russell and Eric played for Whitney Young. They both were playing both ways. They were defense and offense on the tackle end. And what happened is one game they had a guy by the name of Adolph McMillan, who was a friend of Coach Alexander. Coach Alexander coached at the University of Miami. And of course, he had some of Coach Alexander's cards. And he claimed that he was Coach Alexander. And he said, I'm looking at your son, Russell. I want to recruit this kid. And he was just shooting the breeze with me and lying. So anyway, I gathered up Russell's grades, his clippings, and some of his film, and I sent them to the University of Miami, but I never heard from anybody. So I just kept hounding and hounding, trying to get Coach Jimmy Johnson on the phone, trying to get Coach Alexander on the phone. Finally, I got Coach Alexander on the phone. And Coach Alexander came on with this, hello there, My name is Alexander. So I said, listen, are you hoarse? I said, because you don't sound like the same guy I talked to in Chicago. He said, oh, he said, that wasn't me. I had an operation on my throat. I had cancer when I was younger. I said, well, he says, probably one of my friends, Adolph Macmillan or Lee Atkins. I said, sound like Macmillan. I said, he said that you were interested in my son. Well, I tell you what, I'll be up in Chicago in about 2 weeks. And when I get there, I'll talk to you. But when he came to Chicago, he, Adolph Macmillan, and Lee Atkins went over to Mel A.G. Jr.'s house. Okay, they were trying to recruit Mel A.G. Jr. But what happened is that Mel A.G. Sr. had some problems that I won't get into, and they had Coach Kamilowicz from the University of Illinois right there with him. For some reason or another, you had the coach from the University of Illinois and the Miami top recruiter, Axel Alexander there. So when Mel A.G. Sr. walked in that house and he saw them, he said, did I tell you guys that my boy wasn't going to no Miami? He's going to the University of Illinois. Get out of my house. Mel A.G. Senior kicked the screen door off the hook, man. So they came out and they came over to my house. They had no choice. They said, well, this is the last scholarship and we're going to sign Russell, Maryland. So I saw on the television the next day that they had signed Russell, Maryland. And of course, Russell weighed almost 350 pounds. I think they had him at 326. But it's a story within itself there. Just read about it, and you'll know the story of Russell, Maryland at the University of Miami, and then being the first pick in the 1991 NFL draft by the Dallas Cowboys.
And 3 Super Bowl rings. Cowboy Nation! Cowboy Nation! I want to say this as we're going to close down this tremendous video today.
Get closer to your mic.
The thing I'm gonna say is this: looking at you, Mr. Maryland, what I learned today and learned about your story is that your skill set comes in 2 words: hard work A+, determination A+. And it's made me proud today. Me being a kid from the 901 Memphis, Tennessee, and talking to you, you remind me of my father, Chester Turner, who's still living. You remind me of my uncle, O.B. Turner. Because sometimes we have to understand in life, it's the wisdom, it's the love that proclaims what you're supposed to be in this life. And look at your story. Walked on this Southern University, ended up becoming one of the best pitchers in the program history. Then decided not even to really pursue professional baseball, but God had a plan for you, sir. And that plan, your baby boy, first round draft pick of the 1991 NFL draft with the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. And you on 100 yards of football. And then your son, 3 Super Bowl rings. And talking to you over the last few days, I'm going to tell people out there 100 yards football, this man is a very humble man. And he's taught me a lot. I haven't even met him. But just talking to him over the phone the last 2 days, he's made me feel very special where my life is going. And so, Mr. Maryland, your final words today here on 100 Yards of Football.
My final words would be that I'm going to tell everybody, we got to come back to God. We got to come back to God. Once we come back to God and we cast some of these other things aside, we're going to be a better people, whether you're black or white. That's all I can say is that we got to get on our knees and pray and ask God for his mercy. That's what I got to say to you, my man.
My final words here on 100 Yards of Football. I'd like to give special thanks to my team today. Mr. Jeremiah Long, thank you. Producer, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Oak Ridge, Tennessee's finest. To my man, my business partner out of Brooklyn, New York, Mr. Ronnie Keepler, thank you. To the gentleman that's part of 100 Yards of Football, first round pick, 1981 NFL Draft, Atlanta Falcons, started the tradition at Florida State University, Mr. Bobby Butler, thank you. And to Mr. Mark Denham, thank you. And of course, to my family, down home in my hometown in Memphis, Tennessee, the Turner family, I love y'all. Thank you. And to Mr. James Maryland, thank you, bringing everything true about what was going on at Southern University, Ruston, Louisiana in the house, something in the water. All I can say is, when I look at Mr. Maryland, and I said it last night, I'm going to go back to Levi Stubbs in the Four Tops. I'll be there. Y'all be blessed here on 100 Yards of Football. God bless and have a